Hello, Rough Rider Nation, and welcome to this edition of the Rider Report, the ins and outs of Yavapai College athletics. I'm Brad Clifford, the athletic director here at Yavapai College, and today I'm joined by Scott Farnsworth, our former longtime Rough Rider athletic trainer, our former athletic director, twice president of the Faculty Senate, dean of health and sciences, interim Yavapai College Vice President, and current Dean of Health and Sciences. Scott, welcome to the program.
Well, good to be here.
That's a diverse resume.
I've been here for a long time, so you get to do a lot of stuff.
Is that what that means? You're here long enough, you get to do everything.
I think so.
Well, you've been an institution at the institution for a long time. You've been here at Yavapai College. You started as almost the first Yavapai College athletic trainer we've had here.
The first full-time one.
Full-time one.
The year before I got here, they had a part-time individual in the community that would come over on occasion and kind of help out with the teams, but I was the first full-time.
First full-time. Now that was in the late 80s. What can you tell us about those early years?
Well, the campus now has really matured and evolved compared to what it was back then. I remember coming to work and parking in a gravel parking lot,
right.
And so depending on the weather conditions, sometimes you'd get stuck or it was a little muddy. But no, it was a great place then, and it's a great place now.
So if I remember, and I played here. My first year playing here was your first year.
Yeah.
I remember, and it was a small little compact athletic training office and treatment room that we had.
It was. Our athletic training room was a converted closet, and then later we got moved over to office classroom kind of an area. And so my office desk was over in the corner, and we had a couple of treatment tables, and we were trying to do the very best we could on a shoestring budget, and kind of shoehorned into a little room there, but we made it work.
Made it work. That's kind of the story of our career here at Yavapai College, kind of make it work. What was your fondest athletic memory at Yavapai College?
Boy, I don't know that I could limit it to one. Winning the national championship with baseball was great back in '93. I remember, we were down. It was late in the game, and one of our guys hit a deep shot to right center, and it's just a typical easy play, and their outfielder dropped it and gave us life, and we were able to go on and win the World Series, JUCO World Series that year in '93. The first soccer national championship, Mercer County was kind of the big dog at that time, and to go into their facility and to play there, we just felt we were back on our heels pretty much the whole game, and to come away with a win was just surreal.
So now you've been a part of, we've won 15 national championships. You've been a part of
about 11.
I was going to say 10 or 11 of them.
Yeah.
So that's quite a resume as well, to be a part of that.
It is, and it's a team effort. Both on the court or the field, as well as among staff and the institution. There's just a lot of things that come into play. And there's even a little bit of luck thrown in there, like I mentioned with the baseball back in '93. On a routine play, had the outfielder caught the ball, game would have been over. We would have lost, and
who knows what would happen.
Yeah, but just a little fluke play like that, and we ended up winning the whole thing.
So tell me about you've been doing athletic training for a long time. You did athletic training for a long time. Does much change in the athletic training world from year to year? So back in the late 80s, you were an athletic trainer. Does it change in the 2017s?
It does. Healthcare is evolving, and that involves, taking care of injured athletes. Some of the core things are still the same. Taping an ankle then is the same as taping an ankle now. A pulled muscle is the same then as it is now. The approach may become a little bit more refined. It's constantly undergoing research, and as new treatments are discovered or refined, it evolves and improves.
So, speaking of injuries, let's the most gruesome thing you've seen at Yavapai College athletics.
Probably it was a basketball game, and one of our guys, guard, was going down and contesting a shot. They were both athletes were running full speed at the basket, and they got knocked off balance or whatever, and our guy put his hand back to help support himself. Of course, he was his head was as high as the basket, and coming down with that speed and that height, snapped his arm in 2 or 3 places, so yeah, that was pretty gruesome. The other one was a soccer player, Donnie, and I can't remember his last name. He was a defense player and went up to head the ball, and instead of getting the ball, he got the other player's head and came off the field, and what I thought was his eyelid was actually, he had just cut himself across right above the eyebrow all the way across, and it flopped down into his eye. And I could see the bone, and so he was a tough guy. We taped him up and let him finish the game, and then we went and got stitches.
I don't with the concussion, you probably concussion things anymore, you don't probably let him go back on the field.
Well,
nowadays.
That's true, and if I remember correctly, the force and the way it happened was absorbed by the forehead, and so it really wasn't a brain injury. It was more of a soft tissue injury.
Wow. I remember that basketball. I remember because I was on the bench at the time, and it was Brad Geddes, and I remember him coming in holding his arm, and it was askewed everywhere, and that was a pretty gruesome thing.
It wasn't pretty.
Yeah, it wasn't. Ended his season, obviously. You also served as a trainer in the Summer Olympics in Australia. How did that come about? And then tell us about that experience.
Sure. Well, the Olympics are such a huge event that the U.S. Olympic Committee doesn't have the staffing. You're talking 600, 700, 800 athletes, and with coaches and team staff, you're well over 1,000 people for a summer games, and so. They ask for volunteers. It's a couple of year process, interview, and more or less on the job evaluation. And so my beginning started back in 1995, and over the course of 5 years, kind of worked my way to the point where I was invited to be in the Summer Olympics as part of the medical team. And we went to Australia. I was there for a month. A couple of weeks before the game and a couple of days after the game's concluded, and just a fantastic personal and professional experience, one that I look back fondly, and one of the highlights of my career.
Did you what sport did you focus on? One sport, 2 sports, or just athletes in general?
A little bit of both. I was assigned to the triathlon team. I was assigned to the modern pentathlon team, the weightlifting team. Those were my assignments. And then when those weren't competing or busy, it was the expectation that you helped out with everybody.
Sure.
And so, track athletes, softball athletes, anybody else that walked through the door. The U.S. is probably does the best in the summer games and the winter games when it comes to medical care of their athletes.
Sure.
We essentially had a whole clinic operational in Sydney during the Olympics, and so we had a number of physicians and physical therapists and athletic trainers and chiropractor and on in taking care of the athletes.
Were you able to watch any of the?
We did. Part of the perks is that aside from taking care of the athletes, if things were kind of slow, we got free passes. In fact, the credential we had, we could go into any of the other events.
Wow.
And so I got to sit in on, I think it was volleyball and ping pong or something, and of course weightlifting and some of the other events. So it was great.
Very cool. So you've also done the world's oldest rodeo. You were athletic medical personnel there as well. That's another. How does that come about?
Well, they don't have full-time staff, and so the local rodeo here was looking for medical personnel. The rodeo works with Justin Sports Medicine, sponsored by Justin Boot Company, and so they utilize local athletic trainers in rodeos around the country. And so again, back in the early '90s, I kind of got volunteered or looked into that and worked with them for nearly 20 years and saw a lot of rodeo, and that was a lot of fun. And so it was volunteer. It was just giving back to the community and giving back to the Frontier Days Rodeo.
Different type of injury, I would assume, or similar? Or?
Well, you end up with sprained ankles and pulled muscles, so those injuries are kind of the same. But when a guy gets stepped on by a bull or a bronc, that's a little bit different. Yeah. So you don't see those injuries in athletics typically. So
we probably could have, back in the early '70s when we had a rodeo team, we probably could have used some of that expertise, I'm sure. Yeah. So, well. You also served in a number of positions here. You've kind of gone the academic route, I guess you could say, and you served as an interim vice president here a year or so ago. And that tell us about that experience. That's got to be quite a daunting experience, I would think.
It was. To receive the phone call from our president, Dr. Penny Wills, was just a shock. Our academic vice president left unexpectedly, and so that created a void. This was in the summer 2 years ago now, and so I'm humbled that she felt that I could do the job, and so for a year, initially it was anticipated that it would last 6 months, and it turned into about a year long engagement. But so yeah, I was able to step in on an interim basis as the academic vice president and provost, and hopefully provided some direction and continuity for the college as they continued that year. And there was a successful search for our new vice president, Dr. Ron Liss, and so we're happy that he's on board now, and I'm happy to be back doing what I would like to do.
Right. Is there a forecast in the future to do something like that, or is that something you aspire to do?
I'm not going to close any doors right now. It's I've got 2 kids in high school, and so my focus is trying to get them to graduate and go on to higher ed and other things. And so, maybe in a year or 2 from now, I'll revisit those aspirations.
What happens? You and I have been here a long time and been at Yavapai College, and we've seen a lot of changes, and not only cosmetically we've seen a lot of changes, but we've seen a lot of changes with personnel and maybe the direction the college is going. What's the biggest change that you've seen that stands out the biggest to you over the years?
We had a big reorganization back in 2011 based on the state reducing funding at the college. I think that was pretty significant. Unfortunately, at the time, that's when we lost our men's and women's basketball programs, and so I'm hopeful that within the next couple of years we can bring those back. Coming out of that recession, affected the college. It's kind of interesting that it affects it a little bit different. When the economy turns bad, we see enrollments grow.
Right.
So we saw a lot of growth back in the mid and late 2000s, and now, as the economy improves, we're seeing our enrollment shrink. And so with what we're dealing with now and really trying to figure out what is the right size for the college and what courses and programs should be offering to really serve the needs of our students. Yeah. And so that, for me, is exciting, is to really see if we can do a better job at what we do.
Exactly. Well, we've the many titles that you've held here at Yavapai College is obviously a reflection on what you can do for the college and your talents and expertise. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate your time as our athletic trainer. He worked on me a couple of times when I was playing here at Yavapai College, and we we really do appreciate your time and appreciate all your service to Yavapai College athletics especially.
Sure, my pleasure.
This concludes this edition of the Rider Report. We want to remind you to follow us on www.goroughriders.com. Follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and always, Rider Nation, go Rough Riders.
Go Rough Riders.